What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I've got a fairly quick video for you guys, and this is going to be talking all about the current state of weapon balance in Call of Duty Vanguard. This is going to be a fairly opinionated video. I'm going to be sharing my opinion, and I'm also going to be sharing what I've seen in my community as well. And diving right in, I'm probably going to get some backlash for this because apparently as a content creator, you're not allowed to say any nice things about the game you enjoy. I honestly feel the current state of weapon balance in Vanguard is quite good. Like, honestly, some of the best weapon balance we've seen in a long time in Call of Duty. Now, obviously, there are some exceptions. I do feel like there are some guns that are a little on the weak side, other guns that are maybe a little on the powerful side, or at least combinations of guns and attachments. And I will be bringing some of those up later in the video. But the whole idea of this video came to me after being asked repeatedly on stream by many different people, what is the best gun in Vanguard? What gun should I be using if I'm trying to play as well as possible? And I honestly couldn't think of a perfect answer to that question. I could recommend about a dozen guns out there that I feel are top tier, can be used very, very effectively as long as you have the right attachments on them. And I think it's been a really long time since we've seen something like that. Usually in Call of Duty games, there's always going to be the top like 3 or 4 weapons that everyone gravitates toward, and everyone just knows these are the meta guns. And I just don't feel that's the case with Vanguard, and this is largely due to the massive amount of attachments that weapons have. And also, it is partially due to the generally fast time to kill in this game. And that's one thing I want to clarify here. When I'm talking about weapon balance, I'm talking about the weapons in relation to each other contained within Vanguard. I'm not talking about how I feel about this faster time to kill in relation to other games with a slower time to kill like Cold War. I'm just talking about the weapon balance within Vanguard itself. And I really think we're in a solid spot right now. And just out of curiosity, I wanted to see what my followers on Twitter thought of this, just to see if maybe I'm off base on this, and there is actually a very clear meta of a very small handful of like 3 or 4 guns like we usually see that are considered to be the best in the game. So I just asked this on Twitter, what do you consider to be the best gun in Vanguard, assuming you have access to all the attachments? And it is worth noting, I didn't ask what people's favorite gun is, I asked what they consider to be the best gun in the game. And when you scroll through the replies to this, I was able to pull out a dozen weapons that were frequently mentioned by people. I didn't include weapons that were just mentioned maybe like a couple times by a few different people, but weapons that were consistently popping up in the answers to this tweet. I was really commonly seeing like the STG, the Cooper Carbine, the MP40, the BAR, the Well Gun, the Automaton, the M1928 Thompson, the MG42, the DP27, the Gorenko, the Volk, the Type 100, and these are just the ones that were popping up really consistently. There were also a bunch of other ones sprinkled in there where at least several people were agreeing on other weapons. And I think this is generally an excellent sign of balanced weaponry across the board. Now, having said this, like I said earlier, I do feel there are some exceptions. There are some setups that are maybe a little bit on the powerful side, and then other guns just in general that are maybe a bit on the weak side. And I wanted to share what I feel these particular weapons and setups are. I'm in no way begging for a nerf to these. Like I said, I think the general weapon balance is very solid. I just think maybe there's a slight room for improvement with a little bit of tweaking here or there. So a couple examples of this. First up, the 50 BMG BAR. This is the 2-shot kill BAR. If you set it up right, you can have very little recoil, almost 0 recoil. The downsides to this are, of course, it's got a very slow fire rate, so it is unforgiving. It does reward people with really good aim, and it also has fairly slow handling as well, so you can't be quite as aggressive as some other guns. But in the right hands, and if you treat this properly, this is a pretty ridiculous setup. It's a 2-shot kill out to a pretty crazy range. It's got essentially 0 recoil if you set it up right. And if you come up against a player that's very good at using this setup, you're going to have a very, very hard time competing against it. So when it comes to this one, I wouldn't be opposed, and I think it would make sense to add just a little bit more recoil when using the 50 BMG ammo. Obviously with 50 BMG, you shouldn't have like literally 0 recoil, like pinpoint accuracy. And also, even if we throw realism completely out the window here, just balance-wise, I do think this should have some more recoil to it. And I'm not thinking like a ton of recoil to make this unusable. I just don't think it should be that essentially like 0 recoil laser that it currently is. Next up, a gun that I feel is probably just a little too versatile in its current state is the Cooper Carbine with a setup somewhat similar to this. You can actually kit this out in many different ways and still have a ridiculously powerful and versatile setup. Again, I don't think this is like way too powerful or anything. I just feel like it has too much power for its versatility. usually if you have a gun that's highly versatile, it's got to have some drawback somewhere, like maybe not the most amazing time to kill potential out there. Whereas this setup has one of the most amazing time to kill potentials out there, while also being incredibly mobile, great handling, very little recoil, super easy to use and control. And as a result, this is another area where I wouldn't be opposed to a bit of an adjustment. And honestly, when it comes to guns that I feel lean a little bit toward the too powerful side, those are the only two I can really pick out at this point. However, I do feel like there's a handful of guns that are a bit on the weaker side that I feel could maybe use a little bit of love to bring them more in balance with other weapons in the game. And these are the Marksman Rifles in general. I feel like when you compare it to the time to kill potential of the easier to use guns like assault rifles, SMGs, and LMGs, I feel like the base flinch could maybe be toned down a little bit on Marksman Rifles to give them a bit more of a fighting chance in a gunfight. I do think once you max out a lot of the Marksman Rifles with the perfect attachment setups, then you can get them into a place where that flinch just doesn't really matter. But at least for the base version of the guns, I think they could use some love in this area. And this is another sort of subtopic of this video. I do think there is a pretty big discrepancy in weapon balance between a naked gun with no attachments on it and a gun that is fully maxed out and has every attachment available. So with the Marksman Rifles, I do feel like those are a special case where I think the base gun could definitely use some love because they are a big struggle to use until you get to the good attachments. And then, of course, if they buff the base flinch resistance on them, perhaps they could make sure that that doesn't apply when you're using the best setups possible, because, like I said, I think the best setups possible with the Marksman Rifles are very good and competitive. Additionally, when it comes to weak guns, I still feel like most of the sniper rifles are a little on the weak side, again, in relation to the easier to use sort of guns that have ridiculous time to kill potentials. And don't get me wrong, I'm no sniper rifle lover in Call of Duty. A lot of people say I flip-flop on snipers, but I just like snipers being in a really nicely balanced state. I think snipers should be very usable. I think quickscoping should be possible and viable for those that are skilled with that playstyle. And in its current state, I think most of the sniper rifles, with the one exception being the Gorenko, are still just a bit on the weaker side in relation to the ridiculous time to kill that we're seeing in this game. So I wouldn't be opposed to another slight improvement to all of the sniper rifles aside from the Gorenko. I'm definitely not asking for them to be ridiculously overpowered monsters where you have quickscopers running around like crazy just dominating lobbies, but I do think they could use a bit of love. Now finally on my list here, I also have the Sten, the ITRA, as well as the AS44, but honestly, when you take a deeper look at these guns, I feel like they have their place in the game. They may not be the best across the board, and that's fine, they don't have to be. I think the Sten can be a lot of fun when you use it with a hipfire build or a really high aim-walking movement speed build. That can be great with the Sten. And then with the AS44, I feel like that really excels with the burst barrel on there. I think that's actually the best burst gun in the game. And then when it comes to the ITRA burst, I feel like you can build it in a way that makes it quite solid. So I've actually sort of reconsidered my stance on those. I think those are just fine in their current state, or maybe they could use the slightest buff, as long as they don't take it too far, or as long as they don't make it so they lose their identity and their place in the game. And with that, that's pretty much all I've got to say in this video. I really think we are getting to an excellent point when it comes to weapon balance, but a few tweaks here or there could be welcome as long as they make the appropriate changes. And a big thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, I am of course only talking about core game modes. I'm not talking about hardcore. I realize hardcore game modes, the balance isn't quite as good as we've seen in previous years. Like there's only a small handful of guns that are guaranteed to get a one-shot kill all the time, which is a bit out of the ordinary for hardcore, but since I don't have as much experience with that, I don't really feel confident speaking to the weapon balance in hardcore beyond that. And with that, this is where I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think about the current state of weapon balance in Call of Duty Vanguard, assuming all of the attachments are unlocked? Or also, if you wanted to share your thoughts on the discrepancy between a base gun versus a gun that has maxed out attachments, then please feel free to share that as well. And I'm also kind of curious to hear from you guys, what do you think is the best gun to use right now in Vanguard's multiplayer? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.